Chocolate, or an Indian Drink. By Antonio Colmenero. Translated by Captain James Wadsworth. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chocolate, or an Indian Drink. By the use and moderate use whereof, health is preserved, sickness diverted and cured, especially the plague of the guts, vulgarly called the new disease, fluxes, consumptions, and coughs of the lungs, with sundry and other diseases. By it also conception is caused, the birth hastened and facilitated, beauty gained and continued. Written originally in Spanish by Antonio Colmenero. Translated by Captain James Wadsworth. To the Gentry of the English Nation. Sirs, the ensuing tract, I many years since translated out of the original Spanish, and dedicated to the Right Honourable Edward Lord Conway, &c., by whose noble patronage the confection whereof it treats, together with it selfe, were first admitted into the English Court, where they received the approbation of the most noble and judicious those dayes afforded: since which time it has been universally sought for, and thirsted after, by people of all degrees, especially those of the female sex, either for the pleasure therein naturally residing, to cure and divert diseases, or else to supply some defects of nature, wherein it challenges a special prerogative above all other medicines whatsoever. The author thereof was one Antonio Colmenero of LEDESMA, who sometimes lived in the West Indies, where it is very much used, and held in great esteeme until this day; as also in Spain, Italy, and Flanders, and admired by the most learned Doctors of all those nations. As for the name, Chocolate, it is an Indian word, compounded of ate, as some say, or as others, atl, which in the Mexican language signifieth water, and cocoa, the noise that the water, wherein the chocolate is put, maketh when it is stirred in a cup, until it bubble and rise unto a froth, and may be called in English a compounded or confectioned drink. The confection it selfe consists of severall ingredients, according to the different constitutions of those that use it: the principal of which is called Cacao, a kind of nut or kernell, bigger than a great almond, which growes upon a tree called the tree of Cacao, containing in it the quality of the 4 elements, as will appear in the following discourse. The vertues thereof are no lesse various, than admirable: for, besides that it preserves health, and makes such as drinks it often fat and corpulent, fair and amiable, it vehemently incites to Venus, and causes conception in women, hastens and facilitates their delivery. It is an excellent help to digestion. It cures consumptions and the cough of the lungs, the new disease or plague of the guts, and other fluxes, the green sickness, jaundice, and all manner of inflammations, opilations, and obstructions. It quite takes away the morphew, cleanseth the teeth, and sweeteneth the breath, provokes urine, cures the stone and stangury, expels poison, and preserves from all infectious diseases. But I shall not assume to enumerate all the vertues of this confection, for that were impossible, every day producing new and admirable effects in such as drink it. I shall rather refer to the testimony of those noble personages, who are known constantly to use and receive constant and manifold benefits by it, having thereby no other aim than the general good of this Commonwealth, whereof I am a faithfull member, and to be esteemed, as I really am, Gentlemen, your affectionate friend, to love and serve you, Don Diego de Vadesforte, Westminster, December 20th, 1651. The Translator. To every individual man and woman, learned or unlearned, honest or dishonest, in the due praise of divine chocolate. Doctors, lay by your irksome books, And all ye pettifogging rookes, Leave quacking, and enuncleate The vertues of our chocolate. Let the universal medicine, Made up of dead men's bones and skin, Be henceforth illegitimate, And yield to sovereign chocolate. Let body baths be used no more, Nor smoky stoves, but by the whore Of Babylon, since happy fate Has blessed us with chocolate. Let old Punctius grease in his shoes With his mock balsam, and abuse No more the world, but meditate The excellence of chocolate. The Doctor Trigg, who so excels, No longer trudge to Westwood Wells; For though that water expurgate, 'Tis but the dregs of chocolate. Let all the Paracelsian crew, Who can extract Christian from Jew, Or out of monarchy a state, Break all their stills for chocolate. Tell us no more of weapon salve, But rather doom us to a grave: For sure our wounds will ulcerate, Unless they're washed with chocolate. The thriving Saint, who will not come Within a sack shop's bowsing room, His spirit to exhilarate, Drinks bowls at home of chocolate. His spouse, when she, brimfull of sense, Doth want her due benevolence, And babes of grace would propagate, Is always sipping chocolate. The roaring crew of gallant ones, Whose marrow rots within their bones, Their bodies quickly regulate, If once but soused in chocolate. Young heires that have more land than wit, When once they do but taste of it, Will rather spend their whole estate, Than weaned be from chocolate. The nut brown lasses of the land, Whom Nature veiled in face and hand, Are quickly beauties of high rate, By one small draught of chocolate. Besides, it saves them moneys lost Each day in patches, which did cost Them dear, until of late They found this heavenly chocolate. Nor need the women longer grieve, Who spend their oil, yet not conceive; For 'tis a help immediate, If such but lick of chocolate. Consumptions too, be well assured, Are no less soon than soundly cured, Excepting such as doe relate Unto the purse by chocolate. Nay more, its vertue is so much, That if a lady get a touch, Her grief it will extenuate, If she but smell of chocolate. The feeble man, whom Nature ties To do his mistress' drudgeries, O how it will his mind elate, If she allow him chocolate! 'Twill make old women young and fresh, Create new motions of the flesh, And cause them long for you know what, If they but taste of chocolate. There's ne'er a common counsel man, Whose life would reach unto a span, Should he not well affect the state, And first and last drink chocolate. Nor e'er a citizen's chaste wife, That ever shall prolong her life, Whilst open stands her postern gate, Unless she drink of chocolate. Nor doth the Levite any harm, It keepeth his devotion warm, And eke the hair upon his pate, So long as he drinks chocolate. Both high and low, both rich and poor, My Lord, my Lady, and his, With all the folks at Billingsgate, Bow, bow your hams to chocolate. Don Diego de Whatisfort. To the Author. Great Don, Grandee of Spain, Illustrissimo of Venice, High and mighty King of Candy, Great Bashaw of Babylon, Prince of the Moon, Lord of the Seven Stars, Governor of the Castle of Comfort, Sole Admiral of the Floating Caravan, Author of the European Mercury, Chief General and Admiral of the Invisible Fleet and Army of Terra Incognita, Captain James Wadsworth. The allowance of Melchor de Lara, Physitian General for the Kingdom of Spain. I, Dr. Melchor de Lara, Physitian General for the Kingdom of Spain, at the command of Don John de Velasco and Acevedo, Vicar General of Madrid, have seen this Treatise of Chocolate, composed by Antonio Colmenero of LEDESMA, which is very learned and curious, and therefore it ought to be licensed for the Presse, it containing nothing contrary to good manners, and cannot be but very pleasing to those who are affected to Chocolate. In testimony thereof, I have subscribed my name in Madrid the 23rd day of August, 1631. Melchor de Lara. The Testimonial of John de Mena, Doctor and Physitian to the King of Spain. I, John de Mena, Physitian to his Majesty, and one of the Council General of the Inquisition, have seen this Treatise of Chocolate, composed by Dr. Antonio Colmenero of LEDESMA, by command of the Supreme Royal Court of Justice, which containeth nothing contrary to good manners, and the subject is very learnedly handled, and with great judgment, and no doubt but it will give much pleasure and content to all those who are affected to Chocolate, and therefore may be printed, and in confirmation of this truth, I have hitherto subscribed my name the 17th of September, 1631. John de Mena, Doctor in Physique. To the Reader. The number is so great of those who in these times drink Chocolate, that not only in the Indies, where this kind of drink hath its original, but it is also much used in Spain, Italy, and Flanders, and particularly at the Cure; and many do speak diversly of it, according to the benefit or hurt they receive from it: some saying, that it is stopping others; and those the greater part, that it makes one fat; others, that the use of it strengthens the stomach; others, that it heats and burns them; and others say, that although they take it every hour, and in the dog days, yet they find themselves well with it. And therefore my desire is, to take this pains for the pleasure and profit of the Publique, endeavouring to accommodate it to the content of all, according to the variety of those things wherewith it may be mixed; so that every man may make choice of that, which shall be most agreeable to his disposition. I have not seen any, who have written any thing concerning this drink, but only a Physitian of Marchena, who, as it seems, writ only one by relation, holding an opinion, that the Chocolate is stopping, because that Cocoa, the principal ingredient of which it is made, is cold and dry; but because this one reason may not have power to keep some from the use of it, who are troubled with opilations, I think fit to defend this confection, with philosophicall reasons against any whosoever will condemn this drink, which is so wholesome and so good, knowing how to make the paste in that manner, that it may be agreeable to divers dispositions in the moderate drinking of it; and so, with all possible brevity, shall distinguish and divide this Treatise into 4 points, or heads. In the first place, I shall declare what Chocolate is, and what are the qualities of Cocoa, and the other ingredients of this confection; where I shall treat of the receipt set down by the aforesaid Author of Marchena, and declare my opinion concerning the same. The second point shall treat of the quality, which resulteth out of the mixture of these simples, which are put into it. In the third place, the manner of compounding, and how many ways they use to drink it in the Indies. In the fourth and the last place, I shall treat of the quantity, and how it ought to be taken, at what time, and by what persons. End of Part 1. Part 2 of Chocolate, or an Indian Drink, by Antonio Colmenero. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chocolate, or an Indian Drink, by Antonio Colmenero. Part 2. The first point. Concerning the first point, I say, that Chocolate is a name of the Indians, which in our vulgar Castilian we may call a certain confection, in which, among the ingredients, the principal basis and foundation is the Cacao, of whose nature and quality it is necessary first to treat. And therefore I say, according to the common received opinion, that it is cold and dry a praedominio; that is to say, that though it be true, that every simple containes in it the qualities of the four elements, in the action and reaction which it hath in it, yet there results another distinct quality, which we call complexion. This quality or complexion, which ariseth of this mixture, is not alwayes one and the same, neither hath it the effect in all the mixtures, but they may be varied 9 wayes. 4 simple, from whence one only quality doth abound; and 4 compounded, from whence 2 symbolizing qualities are predominant; and 1 other, which we call ad pondus, which is of all these foresaid qualities, which are equilibrio; that is to say, in equall measure and degree. Of all these the complexion of Cacao is composed. Since there arise 2 qualities, which are cold and dry, and in the substance that rules them, hath restringent and obstructive, of the nature of the element of the earth. And then as it is mixed, and not a simple element, it must needs have parts correspondent to the rest of the elements; and particularly it partakes, and that not a little, of those which correspond with the element of air, that is, heat and moysture, which are governed by the unctuous parts. There being drawn out of the Cacao much butter, which in the Indies I have seen drawn out of it, for the face by the Criollas. It may philosophically be objected in this manner: 2 contrary qualities and disagreeing, cannot be in gradu intenso, in one and the same subject. Cacao is cold and dry in predominancy, therefore it cannot have the qualities contrary to those, which are heat and moysture. The first proposition is most certain, and grounded upon good philosophy. The second is contended unto by all. The third, which is the conclusion, is regular. It cannot be denied, that the argument is very strong; and these reasons being considered by him of Marchena, have made him affirme, that chocolate is obstructive; it seeming to be contrary to philosophy, that in it there should be found heat and moysture, in gradu intenso, and to be so likewise in cold and dry. To this there are 2 things to be answered: one, that he never saw the experience of drawing out the butter, which I have done; and that when the chocolate is made without adding any thing to the dried powder, which it is incorporated only by beating it well together, and is united and made into a paste, which is a signe that there is a moist and glutinous part, which of necessity must correspond with the element of air. The other reason we will draw from philosophy, affirming that in the Cacao there are different substances. In the one, that is to say, in that which is not so fat, it has a greater quantity of the oil than of the earthy substance; and in the fatter part, it hath more of the earthy than of the oily substance. In these there is heat and moysture in predominancy, and in the other, cold and dry. Notwithstanding that it is hard to be believed, that in one and the same substance, and so little of the Cacao, it can have substances so different; to the end that it may appear more easie, clear, and evident, first we see it in the Rhubarb, which hath it in hot and soluble parts, and parts which are binding, cold, and dry; which have a vertue to strengthen, bind, and stop the loosenesse of the belly. I say also, that he that sees and considers the still so much of the nature of the earth, as being heavy, thick, cold, and dry, it seems to be thought unproper for the curing opulations, but rather to be apt to encrease them; and yet it is given for a proper remedy against them. This difficulty is cleared thus, that though it be true, that it hath much of the earthy part, yet it hath also parts of sulphur, and of quicksilver, which do open, and disopilate; neither doth it so, untill it helped by art, as it is ground, stirred, and made fine in the preparing of it. The sulphurous parts, and those of quicksilver, being thin, active, and penetrative, they mingle at the last with those parts, which are earthy and astringent, insomuch that they being mingled after this manner one with another, we cannot now say that the steele is astringent, but rather that it is penetrative, attenuating, and opening. Let us prove this doctrine by authorities, and let the first be from Galen 1:3 of the Qualities of Simples, chapter 14, where first of all he teacheth, that all those medicines which to our sense seem to be simple, are notwithstanding naturally compounded, containing in themselves contrary qualities; and that is to say, a quality to expel and to retain, to incrassate and attenuate, to rarefie and to condense. Neither are we to wonder at it, it being understood, that in every foresaid medicine, there is a quality to heat and to cool, to moisten and to dry. And whatsoever medicine it be, it hath in it thick and thin parts, rare and dense, soft and hard. And in the 15th chapter following the same book, he puts an example of the broth of a cock, which moves the belly, and the flesh hath the vertue to bind. He puts also the example of the aloes, which if it was to be washed, loses the purgative vertue, or that which it hath is but weak. That this differing vertue and faculty is found in divers substances, or parts of simple medicaments, Galen shewes in the first book of his Simple Medicines, and the 17th chapter, bringing the example of milke, in which 3 substances are found, and separated, that is to say, the substance of cheese, which has the vertue to stop the flux of the belly, and the substance of whey, which is purging; and butter, as it is expressed in the said Galen, chapter 15. Also we find in wine, which is in the must, 3 substances, that is to say, earth, which is the chiefe, and a thinner substance, which is the flour, and may be called the scum, or froth, and a third substance, which we properly call wine. And every one of these substances contains in itself divers qualities and vertues in the colour, in the smell, and in other accidents. Aristotle in the 4th book of the Meteors, and the 1st chapter, treating putrefaction, he found the same substances; and in the 2nd chapter next following, where he that curious may read it. And also by the doctrine of Galen and Aristotle, divers substances are attributed to every of them mixt under one and the same forme and quantity; which is very conformable to reason, if we consider, that every ailment, be it ever so simple, begets and produceth in the liver 4 humours, not only differing in temper, but also in substance, and begets more or lesse of that humour, according as that ailment hath more or fewer parts, corresponding to the substance of that humour, which is most engendred. And so in cold diseases, we give warme nourishment, and cold nourishment in hot diseases. From which evident examples, and many others, which we might produce to this purpose, we may gather, that when we grind and stir the Cacao, the divers parts, which nature has given it, do artificially and intimately mix themselves one with another; and so the unctuous, warme, and moist parts, mingled with the earthy, as we have said of the steele, represses and leaves them not so binding as they were before, but rather with a mediocrity, more inclining to the warme and moist temper of the air, than to the cold and dry of the earth; as it doth appear, when it is made fit to drink, that you scarce give it 2 turns with the molinet, when there riseth the fatty scum, by which you may see how much it partaketh of the oily part. From which doctrine I gather, that the author of Marchena was in error, who writing of Chocolate, saith that it causeth opilations, because Cacao is astringent; and if the astriction were not corrected, by the intimate mixing of one part with another, by means of the grinding, as is said before. Besides, it having so many ingredients which are naturally hot, it must of necessity have this effect, that is to say, to open, attenuate, and not to bind. And indeed there is no cause of bringing more examples, or producing more reasons for this truth, than that which we see in the Cacao it selfe; which if it not be stirred and compounded, as aforesaid, to make the Chocolate, but eating of it, as is in the fruit, as the Crolas eat it in the Indies, it doth notably obstruct, and cause stoppings, for no other cause but this, that the divers substances which it contains, are not perfectly mingled by the mastication onely, but require the artificial mixture which we have spoken of before. Besides, our adversary should have considered and called to his memory the first rudiments of philosophy, that
A dicto secundum quid, ad dictum simpliciter non valet consequentia.
as it is not enough to say, the blackamoor is white, because his teeth are white: for he may be black, though he hath white teeth: and so it is not enough to say, that the cacao is stopping, and therefore the confection which is made of it is also stopping. The tree which bears this fruit is so delicate, and the earth where it growes is so extreme hot, that to keep the tree from being consumed by the sun, they first plant other trees; and when they are grown up to a good height, then they plant the cacao trees, that when it first shewes it selfe above the ground, those trees which are already grown may shelter it from the sun, and the fruit doth not grow naked, but 10 or 12 of them are in one gourd or cod, which is of the bignesse of a great black fig, or bigger, and of the same forme and colour. There are two sorts of cacao: the one is common, which is of a grey colour, inclining towards red: the other is broader and bigger, which they call patlaxte, and this is white, and more drying, whereby it causeth watchfulnesse, and drives away sleep, and therefore it is not so usefull as the ordinary. This shall suffice to be said of the cacao. And as for the rest of the ingredients, which makes our chocolatical confection, there is notable variety; because some do put into it black pepper, and also Taasko red root like madder, which is not proper, because it is so hot and dry, but only for one who hath a very cold liver. And of this opinion was a certain Doctor of the University of Mexico, of whom a religious man of good credit told me, that he finding the ordinary round pepper was not fit to bring his purpose about, and to the end he might discover whether the long red pepper were more proper, he made triall upon the liver of a sheep, and putting the ordinary pepper on one side, and the red pepper chili on the other, after 24 hours, the part where the ordinary pepper lay was dried up, and the other part continued moist, as if nothing had been thrown upon it. The receipt of him who wrote Marchena is this: of cacao 700, of white sugar 1 pound and a half, cinnamon 2 ounces, of long pepper 14, of cloves half an ounce, 3 cods of the longwood or Campeche tree, or instead of that, the weight of 2 reals, or a shilling of aniseed, as much of agiote as will give the colour, which is the quantity of a hazel nut. Some put in almond kernels of nuts, and orange flower water. Concerning this receipt, I shall first say, this shoe will not fit every foot; but for those who have diseases, or are inclining to be infirm, you may either add, or take away, according to the necessity and temperature of every one. And I hold it not amiss, that sugar be put into it, when it is drunk, so that it be according to the quality I shall hereafter set down. And sometimes they make tablets of the sugar and the chocolate together, which they do onely to please the palates, as the dames of Mexico do use it: and they are there sold in shops, and are confected and eaten like other sweet meats. For the cloves, which are put into this drink by the aforesaid author, the best writers of this composition use them not, peradventure upon this reason, that although they take away the ill savour of the mouth, they bind, as a learned writer hath expressed in these verses:
Fitorem emendat oris cariophilia foedum, constringunt ventrem, primaque membra juvant.
Cloves do perfume a stinking breath, and bind the belly; hence the prime members comfort find. And because they are binding, and hot and dry in the 3rd degree, they must not be used, though they help the chief parts of a concoction, which are the stomach and liver, as appears by the verses before recited. The husks or cods of longwood or Campeche are very good, and smells like fennel, and every one puts in of these, because they are not very hot: though it excuse not the putting in of aniseed, as says the author of this receipt, for there is no chocolate without it, because it is good for many cold diseases, being hot in the 3rd degree, and to temper the coldnesse of the cacao. And it may appear it helps the indisposition of the cold parts. I will cite the verses of one curious in this art.
morbosos renes, vesicam, cultura, vulnam, intestina, iecur, cumque luene caput, confortat, variisque anisum subdita morbis membra, istud tantum vim leve semen habet.
The reins, the bladder, throat, and thing between, entrails and liver with the head, and spleen, and other parts by anus it are comforted, so great are virtues in that little seed. The quantity of a nut of the achiote tasco is too little to colour the quantity made according to his receipt, and therefore he that makes it may put in it as much as he thinks fit. Those who add almonds and nuts do not ill, because they give it more body and substance than maize or panisio grain, like millet, which others use; and for my part, I should alwayes put it into chocolate. For almonds, besides what I have said of them before, are moderately hot, and have a thin juice: but you must not use new almonds, as a learned author says in these verses.
Dat modice calidum dulcisque amygdala succum, et tenuem inducunt plurima damna nova.
New almonds yield a hot and slender juice, but bring new mischiefs by too often use. And the small nuts are not ill for our purpose, for they have almost the temper which the almonds have, onely because they are drier, they come nearer the temper of choler, and do therefore strengthen the belly and the stomach, being dried. For so they must be used for the confection, and they preserve the head from those vapours which rise from the belly, as it appears by the said author in these verses.
Bilis avellanam sequitur, sed roborat alvum ventris, et a fumis liberat assa caput.
Filberds breed choler, the belly fortify; benzoin the head frees from fumosity. And therefore they are proper for such as are troubled with ventuosities, and hypochondriacal vapours, which offend the brain, and there cause troublesome dreams, and sad imaginations. Those who mix maize or panisio in the chocolate do very ill, because those grains do beget a very melancholy humour, as the same author expresseth in these verses.
Crassa melancholicum praestant tibi, panica succum, siccant si penas membra gelantque furis.
Gross ears of corn have cholericky juice, no doubt, which dries if taken inward, cools without. It is also apparently windy, and those which mix it in this confection do it only for their profit, by increasing the quantity of the chocolate; because every fanegia, or measure of maize or Indian wheat granny, containing about a bushel and a half, is sold for 8 shillings, and they sell this confection for 4 shillings a pound, which is the ordinary price of the chocolate. The cinnamon is hot and dry in the 3rd degree. It provokes urine, and helps the kidneys and ryes of those who are troubled with cold diseases; and it is good for the eyes, and in effect it is cordial, as appears by the author of these verses.
Commoda et urinae cinnamomum et renibus, lumina clarificat, dira venena fugat.
Cinnamon helps the reins and urine well; it clears the eyes, and poison doth expel. The achiote has a piercing attenuating quality, as appeareth by the common practice of the physitians in the Indies, experienced daily in the effect of it, who do give it to their patients, to cut and attenuate the gross humours, which do cause shortness of breath, and stopping of urine; and so it may be used for any kind of oppilations, for we give it for the stoppings which are in the breast, or in the region of the belly, or any other part of the body. And concerning the long red pepper, there are 4 sorts of it: one is called chicotes; the other very little, which are called chiltepin; and these 2 kinds are very quick and biting. The other 2 are called tonchilles; and these are moderately hot, for they are eaten with bread, as they eat other fruits; and they are of a yellow colour, and they grow onely about the towns which are in and adjoining to the Lake of Mexico. The other pepper is called chilpaculagua, which has a broad husk, and this is not so biting as the first, nor so gentle as the last, and is that which is usually put into the chocolate. There are also other ingredients which are used in this confection, one called mechasuchil, and another, which they call vincaxtili, which in the Spanish they call orajales, which are sweet smelling flowers, aromatical, and hot. And the mechasuchil hath a purgative quality, for in the Indies they make a purging portion of it. Instead of this, in Spain they put into the confection powder of Alexandria, for opening the belly. I have spoken of all these ingredients, that every one may make a choice of those which please him best, or are most proper for infirmities. The second point. As concerning the second point, I say, as I have said before, that though it be true that the cacao is mingled with all these ingredients which are hot, yet there is to be a greater quantity of cacao, than of all the rest of the ingredients, which serve to temper the coldness of the cacao. Just as when we seek of two medicines of contrary qualities, to compound one, which shall be of a moderate temper, in the same manner doth result the same action and reaction of the cold parts of the cacao, and of the hot parts of the other ingredients, which makes the chocolate of so moderate a quality, that it differs very little from a mediocrity. And when there is not put in any ordinary pepper or cloves, but only a little aniseed, as I shall shew hereafter, we may boldly say that it is very temperate. And this may be proved by reason and experience, supposing that which Galen says to be true, that every mixt medicine warmeth the cold, and cooleth the hot, bringing the example of oil of roses. By experience I say, that in the Indies, as is the custome of the country, I coming in a heat to visit a sick person, and asking water to refresh me, they persuaded me to take a draught of chocolate, which quenched my thirst, and in the morning, if I took it fasting, it did warm and comfort my stomach. Now let us prove by reason. We have already proved that all the parts of the cacao are not cold, for we have made it appear that the unctuous parts, which are many, be all hot or temperate. Then, though it be true, that the quantity of the cacao is greater than all of the rest of the ingredients, yet the cold parts are the most, not half so many as the hot. And if for all this they should be more, yet by stirring and mangling of the warm unctuous parts, they are much qualified. And on the other side, it being mixt with the other ingredients, which are hot in the second and third degree, being the predominant quality, it must needs be brought to a mediocrity. Like as two men who shake hands, the one being hot and the other cold, the one hand borrows heat, and the other is made colder, and in conclusion, neither hand retains the cold or heat it had before, but both of them remain more temperate. So likewise two men, who go to wrestle, at the first they are all in their full vigour and strength, but after they have struggled for a while, their force lessens by degrees, till at last they are both much weaker than when they began to wrestle. And Aristotle was also of this opinion in his 4th Book of Nature of Beasts, Cap. 3, where he says, that every agent suffers with the patient, as that which cuts is made dull by the thing it cuts, that which warms cools itself, and that which thrusts or forces forward is in some sort driven back itself. From whence I gather it is better to use chocolate after it hath been made some time, a moment at least. I believe this time to be necessary for breaking the contrary qualities of the several ingredients, and to bring the drink to a moderate temper. For as it always falls out at the first, that every contrary will have its predominancy, and will work his own effects, nature not liking well to be heated and cooled at the same time. And this is the cause why Galen in his 12th Book of Method doth advise not to use Phelonium till after a year, or at least 6 months, because it is a composition made of opium, which is cold in the 4th degree, and of pepper, and other ingredients which are hot in the 3rd degree. This theorem and doctrine is made good by the practice which some have made, of whom I have asked, what chocolate did best agree with them? And they have affirmed, that the best is that which hath been made some moments, and that the new doth hurt by loosening the stomach. And in my opinion, the reason of it is, that the unctuous or fat parts are not altogether corrected by the earthy parts of the Cacao. And this I shall thus prove: for, as I shall declare hereafter, if you make the Chocolate boyle when you drinke it, the boiling of it divides the fat and oily part; and that makes a relaxation in the stomacke in the old Chocolate, as well as if it were new. So that I conclude in this second point, that the Chocolatical confection is not so cold as the Cacao, nor so hot as the rest of the ingredients; but there results from the action and reaction of these ingredients, a moderate temper, which may be good both for the cold and hot stomackes, being taken moderately, and shall be declared hereafter; and it having been made a moment at the least, as is already proved. And so I know not why many having made experience of this confection, which is composed, as it ought to be, for every particular, should speak ill of it. Besides, where it is so much used, the most, if not all, as well in the Indies, as in Spaine, find it agreeth well with them. He of Marchena has no ground in saying, that it did cause opilations: for if it were so, the liver being obstructed, it would extenuate its subject; and by experience we see to the contrary, that it makes fat: the reason whereof I shall shew hereafter: and this shall suffice for the second point. Part
Section 3 of Chocolate, or an Indian Drink. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Laurie Ann Walden. Chocolate, or an Indian Drink, by Antonio Colmenero de LEDESMA. The third point. Having treated in the first point of the definition of chocolate, the quality of the cacao, and of the other ingredients, and in the second point of the complexion which results from the mixture of them, there remains now in the third point to show the way how to mingle them. And first I will bring the best receipt, and the most to the purpose that I could find out; although it be true which I have said, that one receipt cannot be given which shall be proper for all, that is to be understood of those who are sick. For those that are strong and in health this may serve; and for the other, as I have said in the conclusion of the first point, every one may make choice of the ingredients, as they may be useful to this or that part of his body. The receipt is this: to every 100 cacaos you must put 2 cods of the long red pepper, of which I have spoken before, and are called in the Indian tongue chilparlagua, and instead of those of the Indies, you may take those of Spain, which are broadest and least hot. 1 handful of anise seed orejuelas, which are otherwise called pinacaxlidos, and 2 of the flowers called mechasuchil, if the belly be bound. But instead of this, in Spain, we put in 6 roses of Alexandria beat to powder, 1 cod of campeche or logwood, 2 drams of cinnamon, almonds and hazelnuts of each 1 dozen, of white sugar 1/2 pound, of achiote enough to give it the color; and if you cannot have those things which come from the Indies, you may make it with the rest. The way of compounding. The cacao and the other ingredients must be beaten in a mortar of stone, or ground upon a broad stone, which the Indians call metate, and is only made for that use. But the first thing that is to be done is to dry the ingredients, all except the achiote, with care that they may be beaten to powder, keeping them still in stirring, that they may not be burnt, or become black; and if they be over dried, they will be bitter, and lose their virtue. The cinnamon and the long red pepper are to be first beaten with the anise seed, and then beat the cacao, which you must beat by a little and little, till it be all powdered, and sometimes turn it round in the beating, that it may mix the better. And every one of these ingredients must be beaten by itself, and then put all the ingredients into the vessel where the cacao is, which you must stir together with a spoon; and then take out that paste, and put it into the mortar, under which you must lay a little fire after the confection is made. But you must be very careful not to put more fire than will warm it, that the unctuous part does not dry away. And you must also take care to put in the achiote in the beating, that it may the better take the color. You must searce all the ingredients, but only the cacao. And if you take the shell from the cacao, it is the better. And when you shall find it to be well beaten and incorporated, which you shall know by the shortness of it, then with a spoon take up some of the paste, which will be almost liquid, and so either make it into tablets, or put it into boxes. And when it is cold, it will be hard. To make the tablets, you must put a spoonful of the paste upon a piece of paper. The Indians put it upon the leaf of a plantain tree, where, being put into the shade, it grows hard. And then bowing the paper, the tablet falls off, by reason of the fatness of the paste. But if you put it into anything of earth or wood, it sticks fast, and will not come off, but with scraping or breaking. In the Indies they take it two several ways. The one, being the common way, is to take it hot, with atoye, which was the drink of the ancient Indians. The Indians call atoye pape, made of the flour of maize, and so they mingle it with the chocolate, and that the atoye may be more wholesome, they take off the husks of the maize, which is windy and melancholy, and so there remains only the best and most substantial part. Now, to return to the matter, I say that the other modern drink, which the Spaniards use so much, is of two sorts. The one is, that the chocolate, being dissolved with cold water, and the scum taken off, and put into another vessel, the remainder is put upon the fire with sugar, and when it is warm, then pour it upon the scum you took off before, and so drink it. The other is to warm the water, and then, when you have put it into a pot or dish, as much chocolate as you think fit, put in a little of the warm water, and then grind it well with the molinet, and when it is well ground, put the rest of the warm water to it, and so drink it with sugar. Besides these former ways, there is one other way, which is, put the chocolate into a pipkin with a little water, and let it boil well till it be dissolved. And then put in sufficient water and sugar, according to the quantity of the chocolate, and then boil it again until there comes an oily scum upon it, and then drink it. But if you put too much fire, it will run over and spoil. But in my opinion, this last way is not so wholesome, though it pleaseth the palate better, because when the oily is divided from the earthy part, which remains at the bottom, it causeth melancholy, and the oily part loosens the stomach, and takes away the appetite. There is another way to drink chocolate, which is cold, and it takes its name from the principal ingredient, and is called cacao, which they use at feasts to refresh themselves, and it is made after this manner. The chocolate being dissolved in water with the molinet, take off the scum or crassy part, which riseth in greater quantity, when the cacao is older and more putrefied. The scum is laid aside by itself in a little dish, and then put sugar into that part from whence you took the scum, and pour it from on high into the scum, and so drink it cold. And this drink is so cold that it agreeth not with all men's stomachs, for by experience we find the hurt it doth by causing pains in the stomach, and especially to women. I could deliver the reason of it, but I avoid it, because I will not be tedious. Some use it, etc. There is another way to drink it cold, which is called cacao pinoli, and it is done by adding to the same chocolate, having made the confection as is before set down, so much maize, dried and well ground, and taken from the husk, and then well mingled in the mortar with the chocolate, it falls all into flour or dust. And so these things being mingled, as is said before, there riseth the scum, and so you take and drink it, as before. There is another way, which is a shorter and quicker way of making it, for men of business, who cannot stay long about it, and it is more wholesome, and it is that which I use. That is, first to set some water to warm, and while it warms you throw a tablet, or some chocolate, scraped, and mingled with sugar, into a little cup, and when the water is hot, you pour the water to the chocolate, and then dissolve it with the molinet, and then without taking off the scum, drink it as is before directed. The fourth part. There remains to be handled in the last point of the quantity which is to be drunk, at what time, and by what persons: because if it be drunk beyond measure, not only of chocolate, but of all other drinks, or meats, though of themselves they are good and wholesome, they may be hurtful. And if any find it opilative, it comes by the too much use of it; as when one drinks over much wine, instead of comforting and warming himself, he breeds and nourisheth cold diseases, because nature cannot overcome it, nor turn so great a quantity into good nourishment. So he that drinks much chocolate, which hath fat parts, cannot make distribution of so great a quantity to all the parts, and that part which remains in the slender veins of the liver, must need cause opilations and obstructions. To avoid this inconvenience, you must only take 5 or 6 ounces in the morning, if it be in winter. And if the party who takes it be choleric, instead of ordinary water, let him take the distilled water of endive. The same reason serves in summer, for those who take it physically, having the liver hot and obstructed. If his liver be cold and obstructed, then to use the water of rhubarb. And to conclude, you may take it till the month of May, especially in temperate days. But I do not approve that in the dog days it should be taken in Spain, unless it be one, who by custom of taking it, receives no prejudice by it. And if he be of a hot constitution, and that he have need to take it in that season, let it, as is said before, be mingled with water of endive, and once in 4 days, and chiefly when he finds his stomach in the morning to be weak and fainting. And though it be true that in the Indies they use it all the year long, it being a very hot country, and so it may seem by the same reason it may be taken in Spain: first, I say, that custom may allow it; secondly, that as there is an extraordinary proportion of heat, so there is also of moisture, which helps with the exorbitant heat to open the pores, and so dissipates and impoverisheth our substance, or natural vigor, by reason whereof, not only in the morning, but at any time of the day, they use it without prejudice. And this is most true, that the excessive heat of the country draws out the natural heat, and disperseth that of the stomach, and of the inward parts. Insomuch that though the weather be never so hot, yet the stomach being cold, it usually doth good. I do not only say this of the chocolate, which, as I have proved, hath a moderate heat. But if you drink pure wine, be the weather never so hot, it hurts not, but rather comforts the stomach. And if in hot weather you drink water, the hurt it doth is apparent, in that it cools the stomach too much, from whence comes a vitiated concoction, and 1,000 other inconveniences. You must also observe, that it being granted, as I have said, that there are earthy parts in the cacao, which fall to the bottom of the cup when you make the drink, divers are of the opinion that that which remains is the best and the more substantial, and they hurt themselves not a little by drinking of it. For besides, that it is an earthy substance, thick and stopping, it is of a melancholy nature, and therefore you must avoid the drinking of it, contenting yourself with the best, which is the most substantial. Last of all, there rests one difficulty to be resolved, formerly pointed at, namely, what is the cause, why chocolate makes most of them that drink it fat? For considering that all of the ingredients, except the cacao, do rather extenuate than make fat, because they are hot and dry in the 3rd degree. For we have already said that the qualities which do predominate in cacao are cold and dry, which are very unfit to add any substance to the body. Nevertheless, I say that the many unctuous parts, which I have proved to be in the cacao, are those, which pinguify and make fat. And the hotter ingredients of this composition serve for a guide or vehicle to pass to the liver and the other parts, until they come to the fleshy parts. And there finding a like substance, which is hot and moist, as is the unctuous part, converting itself into the same substance, it doth augment and pinguify. Much more might be said from the ground of philosophy and physique, but because that is fitter for the schools than for this discourse, I leave it, and only give this caution, that in my receipt you may add melon seeds, and seeds of pompions of Valencia, dried and beaten into powder, where there is any heat of the liver or kidneys. And if there be any obstructions of the liver or spleen with any cold distemper, you may mix the powder of ceterach, to which you may add amber or musk to please the scent. And it will be no small matter to have pleased all with this discourse. Finis. How to make use of the chocolate, to be taken as a drink, exceeding cordial for the comfort of the healthful, and also for those in weakness and consumptions, to be dissolved in milk or water. If you please to take it in milk, to a quart 3 ounces of chocolate will be sufficient. Scrape your chocolate very fine, put it into your milk when it boils, work it very well with the Spanish instrument called molinillo between your hands, which instrument must be of wood, with a round knob made very round, and cut ragged, that as you turn it in your hands the milk may froth and dissolve the chocolate the better. Then set the milk on the fire again, until it be ready to boil, having the yolk of 2 eggs well beaten with some of the hot milk. Then put your eggs into the milk, and chocolate and sugar, as much as you like for your taste, and work all together with the molinillo, and thus drink a good draught. Or, if you please, you may slice a little manchet into a dish, and so eat it for a breakfast. You may, if you please, make your chocolate with water and sugar, working it after the same order with your molinillo, which for some weak stomachs may chance to be better liked. And many there be that beat almonds, and strain them into the water it is boiled, and wrought with the chocolate and sugar. Others like to put the yolks of eggs as before in the milk, and even sweeten it with sugar to your taste. If you drink a good draught of this in a morning, you may travel all the day without any other thing, this is so substantial and cordial. The manner of making chocolate. Set a pot of conduit water over the fire until it boils. Then to every person that is to drink, put an ounce of chocolate, with as much sugar into another pot, wherein you must pour a pint of the said boiling water, and therein mingle the chocolate and the sugar with the instrument called el molinillo, until it be thoroughly incorporated; which done, pour in as many half pints of the said water as there be ounces of chocolate. And if you please, you may put in 1 or 2 yolks of fresh eggs, which must be beaten until they froth very much. The hotter it is drunk, the better it is; being cold it may do harm. You may likewise put in a slice of white bread or biscuit, and eat that with the chocolate. The newer and fresher made it is, the more benefit you shall find by it. That which comes from foreign parts, and is stale, is not so good as that which is made here. Finis. End of Section 3. End of Chocolate or an Indian Drink, by Antonio Colmenero de LEDESMA.